Alright, so the last thing I want to show you guys is how to do these things with the calculator. Histograms, boxplots, and the 5-number summary that we went over, which is minimum value, the first quartile, the median, the third quartile, and the max value. So let's do a histogram first. So we kind of briefly went over this in class, but I want to go over it again. These numbers that we've been working with, this distribution of commuting time, I have already entered it into the calculator, but if you had not done that and you wanted to do that, first you turn your calculator on, of course, but then you go to Stat, which is easy to remember because we are in a Stat class. And the first thing that comes up, Edit. You're going to edit your list. So I have already entered in all these numbers, and I entered them in from up here. So you have 10, 30, 5, 25, all the way to our 20th distribution or observation. So we have 20 observations, and I have this in the list. And what I can do now is go to second. We'll hit second, y equals to bring up the stat plot, and you'll have all these plots you can access and turn on, but you want to make sure that you only have one on at a time, because if you have multiple on, it'll mess with the other ones, and that's not a good thing. So let's just pick the first one, press enter, and you want to make sure you turn it on, and then we will scroll down one. You have different types of plots you can pick, and you can peek ahead and you can see that we can make a box plot, and we will do that, but first we're going to make this one the histogram. You just press enter, and you can see that it has our x-axis list will come from L1, and now all you have to do is engrave this in your brains. You are going to press zoom 9, and you'll see your histogram come up. Now what we want to do, the TI calculator comes up with your bins or your the ranges that your observations fall in by themselves, and sometimes it's not what we'd want them to be. So let's press trace and see what they use. They have our x axis going from 5 to, it looks like, 101, which is kind of weird. And if you notice, our bins range from 5 to 21, 21 to 37, 37 to 53. So that's a large range of 16, and I would recommend with our data values, it ranges from 5 to 85. So our x-axis, I would think that a x-axis from 0 to 90 would actually be just fine. So how you change that is you go to Window right here, and you don't want to mess with the y's, but with the x's, you just, for x min, we said we'll make it 0. And for x max, let's make it 90. And then let's do a x scale of 10. So that's going to set our bins. So it'll go in from 0 to 10 to 10 to 20, and so on and so forth. So you don't want to press zoom 9, because that will, every time you press zoom 9, it'll go back to whatever the calculator thinks it should be. But you just go back to graph. You press graph, and it'll graph it as we have. And this looks pretty familiar if you think about the stem and leaf plot that we got from this data. Here's our outlier, 85, and we can trace to see that there's one value there. And we have a gap here, we have a gap there, and just like in our stem and leaf plot, we had a gap from 50 to 60, right? So we can see the shape of this distribution is skewed right, and yeah, so this is how we find a histogram. You can mess with the bins all you want. If we wanted to do a bin of 5 instead of 10, we can see the data is way more spread out, but that's probably not telling us really much more than we need to know. So I think a bin of 10, bin is B-I-N, by the way, is just fine. It works just fine for this distribution. We can tell the shape from it, and the different trends that go on, and the gaps and things like that. So another thing I want to show you is that 5-number summary. So that 5-number summary is our min, our max, our Q1, our Q3, and our median, right? So minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and max. And how we find that on the calculator is very easy. So just like if you want to go back to the first step, you go to stat, you enter in your data values, and we already have them entered in. You go back to stat, and then you want to cursor over to the right, and at the top you'll see it says edit, calc, and test. We want to cursor over to the right to calc, and that first thing that comes up is one variable stat, so that's going to be our variable statistics. And if we press enter and you go down to calculate, on the TI-83 this will be a little different. You'll just press enter until you get what shows up here. This is the 5-number summary, or it actually gives us all kinds of stuff. It gives us the mean, which remember we calculated it earlier to get 31.25. It gives us the standard deviation, which we have not covered yet, but we will on Monday. And then it gives us our sample size, n equals 20. And if we scroll down to the bottom, it gives us our 5-number summary. We have our min value of 5. We have our Q1 of 15, our median of 22.5, our Q3 of 42.5, and our max value of 85. So it gives us all the things that we need to set up a box plot. And if you remember, that's how we set up our box plot. Our 5-number summary is what helped that. Now you need to know Q3 and Q1 so you can figure out what the IQR is, and you can calculate for outliers, and that way that's how we can figure out if there are outliers present, and we know to denote those with a dot. Now you can also make box plots with your calculator. So just like we made a histogram by going to second stat plot, we would, instead of doing a histogram, go to this next one. Notice that there's two different box plots. One has outliers and one does not. So I don't even know why they have this one on the calculator, but we're going to choose the one that has outliers because we want to know whether those are present or not. You just press enter, and then we will zoom 9, and it'll graph our box plot. And look at this; it looks pretty much exactly the same as the one we graphed by hand. And this is just kind of a quicker way to do it, I guess. And it's important to know how to do it by hand. You know the concepts and things like that, because they might ask you to do that. But for speed and for efficiency, it's good to know how to do it on the calculator as well. So yep, I think that's it for the calculator so far. And once again, I will see you in class on Monday.